Okay, we are talking about West Nile virus, and I want to define some terms, Elene, before we do, but I want to get this out first. As far as I've seen in the reporting from the Yuma Sun this week, no reported cases of West Nile virus in Yuma County at this time, no positive cases of West Nile virus. What we're talking about is managing the risk. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we don't have any reported human cases, but we do have a lot of positive mosquito pools, and we also have positive sentinel chicken samples that came back showing that we have West Nile throughout the.
But so far, no sick people.
That we know of,
Okay.
and that can be a lag time on reporting.
Okay, let's define some terms. West Nile virus, for people who don't know. What is West Nile virus?
So West Nile virus is a mosquito-borne disease that came from West Nile. It came to Yuma, it came to the United States in 1999 and made its way over to our side of the country in about 2000.
And what kind of virus is it?
So it's an encephalitis virus, and I'm not a medical doctor. I'm more on the abatement side, so that means that I work more in the insect side of it. But an encephalitis virus gets into your brain, and it can cause severe damage to your central nervous system, and it can even cause death.
And it's just one of the sort of risky viruses that you're testing for, because I had never heard of St. Louis encephalitis.
So we're also testing for St. Louis encephalitis, which is also encephalitis virus. It's in the same family as West Nile virus, so it's pretty similar. And we also do have St. Louis encephalitis this year. We have 2 pools that tested positive so far, and the same as West Nile. It can get into your central nervous system, into your brain. It can cause inflammation, and it can cause death. It can cause serious illness.
You're obviously concerned about the entire county, but are there particular populations that are more vulnerable to these viruses?
If you're out on riparian areas or areas with a lot of standing water, in the river areas, if you're in the river at night or early morning fishing, or just actually at one of the lakes staying there, then you're going to be more vulnerable because the population of mosquitoes are high.
To manage this virus, then it's important to find and manage the sources of the virus, which are these mosquitoes. Talk about the physical work of getting these mosquito samples. Where are you doing this work? Is it everywhere across the county?
So there's different districts involved. There's different agencies that work together. One of them is Cocopah tribe. We work with the Quezon tribe. We work at the Yuma County Health Department. We work with Indian Health Services, and then our district. And we all have our different areas and territories that we work to trap. What we do is we go out and we set dry ice traps on a biweekly basis. We set those out in the evening before sun goes down, and we pick them up in the morning after the sun goes up, and we take those back to our lab. We speciate. So what that means is we separate the different species of mosquitoes. We separate the floodwater mosquitoes, which are just nuisance biting mosquitoes that don't vector disease, and we separate the ones that do vector disease, and those ones we take back to the lab and we sample those for different viruses. And we also have chicken sentinel flocks. So what those are chicken flocks throughout the county that we go and test biweekly. We take blood samples from each chicken, and since the chickens are outside 24/7, the chances of us seeing more virus detection in the chickens versus a biweekly sampling with the CO2 with the dry ice traps is higher. And then we can test them for actually 3 different diseases. So we test them for Western equine encephalitis, St. Louis encephalitis, and West Nile encephalitis.
Jennifer, you collect some samples on the Cocopah Reservation for the Pest Abatement Districts. How do you know where to look?
That's right. So we do sample on each of Cocopah's 3 reservations. And it is important to sample a couple of places on each reservation just so we have that data and can protect each population. But especially on our North Reservation, that does lie along the Colorado River. So that is a very important location. One of our sampling locations is right along the riverbank, and we do tend to see more mosquitoes there, especially of the KAWC species, which can carry West Nile.
My understanding is that you're actually finding fewer mosquitoes this year, but the concerning thing is that more of them have the virus?
Yes.
Or carry the virus, I guess is the proper term, is that right?
So we're seeing a lower overall population or number of mosquitoes, but we're seeing a higher rate of infection in the mosquitoes. So normally per trap site, I would have 4 mosquito testing pools, 4 to 6 pools. And this year, I'm only getting 1 or 2 pools per site. And each pool or each testing pool that I'm putting through is coming up with positives. Last year, I would have the 4 pools and maybe 1 of the 4 pools would come positive. The other thing that's concerning is a lot of my testing pools are only catching 1 to 5 mosquitoes in each trapping site, and I'm seeing positives in those. So that means that the chance of you being bitten by an infected mosquito is really high. So if I'm only catching 1 mosquito in a trap and it's popping positive, or 5 mosquitoes, then the minimum infection rate is very, very high. So like maybe last year, the chances of you being bitten by an infected mosquito were 1 in 50. And this year, they're like 1 in 5. So you can see the difference in the number. So we really want people to be aware of that and take precautions when they're outside in the evenings, in the morning, or any water areas. If they have mosquitoes breeding in their yard, we want them to go ahead and take care of that.
Are there conditions each year that make it a more susceptible year for the virus than others? Is it drought? Is it an especially wet year, meaning more mosquitoes, meaning more dangerous year? How do you know what to maybe expect ahead of time each year?
So mosquito control is kind of like what Forrest Gump says, life is like a box of chocolates. You'll never know what you're going to get. We can say that rain does have an effect on it. We do think that rain does have an impact on it because last year we had a really wet spring early on. And so that meant that there was more grasslands, more birds were hatching out. So we had fresh bird population. So maybe they didn't have resistance to West Nile or St. Louis encephalitis. And then they were impacted by that. But this year we really didn't have a wet spring. We did have a mild spring, so maybe that impacted bird populations too. So we can take ganders at it and we can guesstimate things, and there's lots of studies involved in this. But honestly, it's the box of chocolates thing.
Jennifer, the Cocopah Reservation, we've talked in the past about accessing some of the more remote areas of the reservation and how you've had to fight back invasive species just to get to certain areas. Has that impacted your ability at all to contribute to this research and gather these samples?
Well, I would say the locations that we do along the Colorado River on the north, we can still access sites. So I'd say the invasive species haven't really posed too much of a problem. But yeah, that is a separate concern and just another issue that we're fighting
Right.
along the riverbank. So,
What programs on the reservation exist to inform and keep the population up to speed about what's going on with West Nile in particular?
yeah, I would say the great thing about the Cocopah tribe is that we really do work together among all the departments there to keep the Cocopah community safe. So our Environmental Protection Office works each year to do the Fight the Bite campaign. And so every year we really just encourage community members to take some kind of precautions like wearing long sleeves, wearing repellents before they go out, and also maintaining areas around their household, whether that's your pet's water bowl or old tires lying around. Really minimizing any kind of breeding sites for the mosquitoes. And then, we encourage the Cocopah community to do that, but exactly like this partnership shows, it's not really something that you can separate by individual communities. It's something that we're pushing for the whole Yuma area, so it's important for everyone.
Elene, we talked a little bit before we started the interview about how important it is to have this partnership with the Cocopah tribe. That was an area that you weren't actually getting into in the Pest Abatement District in the past.
Yeah, so we're really grateful for the work and the collaboration that we're doing with the Cocopah tribe and all of the program building they've been doing over the past 2 years. So since they've been able to take over areas that I used to do surveillance on their reservations or areas, it has allowed us to open up more trapping sites within our district and get a better view of what's going on countywide.
That would be a pretty large area not to have a snapshot of.
Exactly. And we want to make sure that everybody in the Yuma community is represented and that we're not leaving black spots or blank areas where we don't know what's going on with virus.
And last question for both of you, and I know both of you have mentioned these steps that people can take, but I want to be very specific about them. What are the steps people can take to protect themselves and their families? Insect repellent, you mentioned, long sleeve shirts. If you could reiterate a little bit about just little bowls of water in your yard, you don't want to leave those out there.
Exactly. Yeah, you would be surprised just a small amount of water that it takes for mosquitoes to be able to breed in such a location. So, yeah, I would say to everyone, just take a look around your house, in your yard. If you have something like a tire where water can easily accumulate and doesn't really drain out of. Your pet's water bowl, some people will just leave it out there, and something like that, you do need to be changing the water very frequently. Also in the summertime, you have little pools that kids like to play in, and you want to be either dumping that water out or switching it out very often. So yeah, pay attention to what's happening in your neighborhood. If you see mosquitoes, very active around a certain area, just be aware of that and try to manage it the best that you can.
Yeah, the other thing that we like people to do is if you are having a lot of mosquitoes in your area, you can call our district if you're within the Yuma County Pest Abatement District, or if you're within Yuma County city limits, then you want to call the Yuma County Health Department. You want to report that mosquito activity. If you have neighbors that have neglected green pools, that's a huge breeding site for mosquitoes. So you can go ahead and call us at 726-1030, or you can call the Yuma County Health Department to report that.
Elene, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about West Nile virus and St. Louis encephalitis and the work that you're both doing to keep us all safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you. We appreciate you having us on.